Hello. John and I are back with segment 11, just like we promised. We are on our 11th segment of,
How can you say that?
and tonight we have another hopefully interesting topic that you guys would enjoy. Tonight's topic is strange, weird, and coincidental occurrences.
Why did you struggle with that? We practiced it 9 times before we got on the air.
Oh, but
So what's the problem?
Because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss one of them.
Oh, I thought it was my incredible good looks that were distracting you, but apparently
in that moment, I could not remember the third one, and I don't know why.
it's only 3 words. It's not that hard.
Well, John, we already know that I am the brain dead person in your eyes. And so I cannot make a mistake without getting nailed to
No,
the
I'll
cross.
pounce on you anytime you make a mistake.
Yeah.
A nail to the cross is offensive against my religion. We don't believe in that.
Well, your religion says things about our religion that we don't beat you up for because we realize it's ignorance, not your fault.
My religion is ignorance?
No, the things you say.
All right, listen, let's just move on. Okay, so
other people's religion.
I didn't knock anybody's religion. I just said I don't subscribe to that nailing to the cross thing. We don't do that. In fact, we have been held responsible for the nailing of the cross. So it's a sore topic for me and my people, and I don't want to go there.
All right, since it's not the religious topic, I'm going to let this one slide.
Excellent. So now, speaking of religion and speaking of our topic, strange, weird, and coincidental occurrences. You see how I said that without stuttering?
Yeah, because you're smart.
Without dropping words.
Perfect, yeah.
No,
yeah.
It's called practicing. I prepare for podcasts and I rehearse what I'm going to say. You come in and you just wing it. Like a cowboy. That's what you do. You think you're a podcast cowboy. Well, guess what? You're not a podcast cowboy. You got piles of notes there. You can't even read them. You're holding it upside down, by the way. Okay, so now we're going to talk about, you mentioned religion. So although
I wish that the listeners could see how I look at you just now.
I thought you said you're not going to interrupt me.
Because if looks could kill, you'd be dead.
The look you're giving me?
Yes.
Anyways, so speaking of strange, weird, and coincidental occurrences, I'm just going to open our podcast because you mentioned we were talking about religion, which is something we always bicker about because you generally don't understand mine. You know,
I don't judge anybody's religion.
Yeah, you judge me. You judge me all the time. You are a judge.
You need to stop projecting, John. You are a projector living in a matrix.
No, you told me I'm a boy living in a man body.
No,
I'm a man
I
boy.
said you're a man boy.
A man boy.
Yes.
Okay. Can we move on now? Because the listeners
true.
don't need to hear about this. We could do this another time. We're here to do a podcast, okay? So let's focus on the podcast. Now, what I was going to say is that it's actually very odd when we talk about specifically coincidental occurrences. And you know why it's weird? Remember how I get Jewy sometimes when we do podcasts and I talk about things from Judaism? So do you know that in ancient Hebrew language, which is the language of the Old Testament, you set the timer? Okay, there you go. In ancient Hebrew, which is the Hebrew of the Old Testament, do you know that there is no Hebrew word that exists for the word coincidence? There's no Hebrew translation. There's no word. Do you know that? No, you don't know that. Do you want to know why?
Yes.
Okay. The reason why is because I don't know. No, I do know. The reason why is because there's no such thing in Judaism as coincidence, because it is kind of looked at as a predetermined outcome by God. So what human beings view as coincidence of, it's ironic, it just happened like this, is a premeditated plan by God, where everything that happens is set by him, and we're just the actors in, like, to use an analogy, because you're a drama person, an actress, it's like we are actors in his play or in his theater. So I found that very interesting. My son is the one that actually mentioned that last night when I said the topic, and I'm like, I need ideas, because I was really struggling with this one, because this was your topic, not mine. So I was not fully prepared, but anyway, that's the point. There's no Hebrew word for word coincidence. We believe that everything is predetermined by God.
Okay.
Do you find that to be interesting at all?
I've heard this perspective before.
From
I
who?
did not realize it was a Jewish thing. Well, I believe that.
Which part?
I believe that there's no such thing as a coincidence.
So then why did we title this podcast
Because
Strange,
there are
Weird,
people,
and Coincidental Occurrences?
and it's not just about us.
Oh, okay. All right,
Oh,
fine.
John,
Okay.
I know you're not capable of thinking outside of yourself.
No.
So gentle reminder, there are people who believe in coincidences. So
Yeah, well, they're wrong.
we are. Anyway, I want to share a strange occurrence. Now I know it's not strange, but in the moment and at the time it was. When I got my new car, when I bought my car and it was new, I brought it home,
Which one?
the Mercedes that I have now.
Okay.
I brought it home and I was trying to program
Yeah.
I was trying to program it into the garage so that I can open the garage from the car. Because my previous car, that's how I got into the house. So I called up Mercedes and I go, how do I do this? I'm having trouble doing it. And so I'm on the phone with the guy and he's, guiding me on how to do it. And he said that if I hadn't been successful, that he would come to my house and do it. So I said, okay, so he's telling me what to do, and I did it. And then I said, I think it works. So I tried it and it worked. So later that night, I'm in bed and I hear my garage door opening.
Mhm.
And I live alone. And
That's
the
creepy.
house where I lived in San Francisco in the Silicon Valley, I didn't lock the door that connects my garage to the house. So I pulled the car in the garage, closed the garage door, and I just closed the door, but not locked
So
it.
if someone gets into your garage, they could just walk right into your house because you don't have the door.
Will just come in, right?
Okay.
So I'm laying in the bed and I'm like, is that my garage door opening? How could my garage door be opening? I was a little freaked out. So I ran downstairs and I closed it. And this is late at night. And so I go to bed. And then my neighbor rings me on the phone. She goes, Jenny, I just came home and your garage is open. I go, what you mean my garage is open? That's not possible. It just opened by itself. I went downstairs and I closed it. How is it possible? What's going on with the garage?
So I don't trust technology.
And then I said, you know what I think? I was programming my new car to connecting it to the garage, and I may have done something wrong. But what could I have done that the garage would randomly keep opening itself? And so I was really freaked out. So I went downstairs, and for the first time, I locked the door that connects my garage to the house. So the next morning, I'm having breakfast, and I hear the garage door opening.
Wait. Your solution to preventing the garage from opening again by itself was to lock the door from the garage to your house? How does that have any connection to the garage door opening?
If anybody if
But
somebody,
why don't you try to fix the problem?
I don't know what the problem is.
You close the garage and you disconnect the stupid opener from the Mercedes, and that's the end of it.
No, because I didn't connect it to the Mercedes. How would the Mercedes open the garage if the Mercedes is in park? It's a brand new
What's the
car.
bottom line? How did this happen?
So this went on for a while, and I
A
was
while, like weeks?
two or 3 days. And I was like perplexed, and I called Mercedes, and nobody could understand what was going on. You're never gonna believe it. My neighbors were driving by when I was programming my car, and I programmed my garage into their car.
That is weird.
It happened.
Oh, that just reminded me of something else. That is weird.
Which is why I thought
So anytime they were opening their garage, yours was opening too?
every time they open their garage, they open my garage every time. So what I don't understand though
That is strange.
is how was I able to get 2 garages programmed into their car?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to
It
that.
was very
That's a
perplexing.
problem with technology, and that's why I told you I don't trust Amazon Alexa. I don't trust these Google things that listen to everything. It's not good. But that reminded me of something actually, and this is not anything that
Let me finish my story before you tell your
Oh
thing.
my God, it wasn't over yet. Okay, go ahead.
Finally, Mercedes had to come to my house and then reprogram everything, because I couldn't very well call the neighbors and go, hey, you're opening and closing my garage. They weren't the kind of neighbors that you could just go.
Right, you didn't have
I
a
had
relationship with
great
them.
neighbors, but they were the oddballs.
Now, if you actually bought the good Mercedes instead of the low end one that you had, they would have come to your house right away as the concierge service and done it for you. But I guess when you start off with the lower end Mercedes, you have to start trying it yourself.
They offered Jonathan, and I did not want them to come because I like to do things for myself.
Yeah, we'll have that work out for you. Not too good. So you know what this reminded me of this story? So when we got married, I lived in when I got married, we lived in an apartment in Queens. And my neighbor next door was someone that I knew growing up, and I got very friendly with her husband. This is, we had talked about them once before. This is the friend of mine who's a doctor that died about a year ago from cancer. Unfortunately, it was horrible. Anyway, so when my wife was using those cordless phones, right? Not a cell phone, I'm just talking a home cordless phone. And she's talking to someone and giving a recipe to someone over the phone. So my neighbor calls up, on call waiting, and Karen answers the phone, and it was my neighbor's name was Franny. And she's like, "Hey, Franny, how you doing?" She goes, "Karen, I hear you. I hear you on the radio. You're giving out the recipe on the radio show." And Karen's like, "What are you talking about? I'm on the phone with my sister talking about recipe." She goes, "No, it's coming through my radio." So this phone conversation was coming through my friend's clock radio that she had on our night table. Now, fortunately, it was just she turned it on during the part where it was a recipe. But what if it was something that you don't want to publicize to your neighbors for whatever reason? It was crazy. It was actually coming through on the radio. Is that weird? Now, which story is weirder, this one or your garage door one? They're both strange.
No, the garage story was weird because my neighbor.
No, that cuts to fall under the cover of strange.
Friend, we were all perplexed, including Mercedes. They're like, "Jenny, we've never heard of anything like this. But what are the chances that while
That is
I am
strange.
programming I think that's a strange occurrence."
So that covers strange and almost covers weird also. So let's do something coincidental. Can I do one that's coincidental?
Why can't we tell many weird and many?
We can. I just want to make sure that if we put something in the subject line of the podcast, that we attach something in the podcast to that word.
So please,
otherwise, it's like bait and switch.
The weird part is what we need to cover now, or is it?
No, I want to do coincidental. I have something coincidental. Do you mind?
Go
no, you go first.
No,
because you did a story that I do a story. Now it's your turn.
No. I don't have anything for coincidence.
Oh, so you didn't properly prepare for this podcast.
I did, but you know what?
Okay,
John?
you got an F. Okay, you failed the podcast. You failed podcast. Here's your grade. Big F for fail. Okay, now coincidental. So I had a very coincidental thing. My daughter, who I mentioned on previous podcasts, is overseas studying in Israel after she left after high school and before college. So I don't know if I mentioned this on a previous podcast. If I did, please stop me because I hate repeating things. I think it's so boring for listeners. So she was 17 years old and not vaccinated. Okay, because she didn't do the whole vaccination thing. And she was planning on going right to college after high school. But she had this nasal issue, right? So my son went to talk to a very well-known rabbi about her medical issue. There's a rabbi that's called in Hebrew, almost called like a makubal. A makubal is like not a fortune teller, but somebody that kind of like reads you and sees through you and sees what's going on in your head and gives you advice and guidance to try to steer you in the right direction. I have some very coincidental stories about that if we have time. So the guy's answer to my son went and said, she's got this medical problem. She had surgery. It didn't fully work. What should we do? And the answer that this rabbi said was that she should go to Israel for the year. And my daughter had no interest in going to Israel for the year. She had been telling the school she's not going, and she was going straight to college. Anyway, so my son comes home and tells us this, and my daughter's like, and I said to my daughter, her name's Carly, I said, Carly, I go, so what do you want to do? She goes, well, if he said that I have to go to Israel, I guess I have to go to Israel. And she totally changed her mind. And I said, well, the problem with going to Israel is that not that it costs $31,000, which it does, which was a problem, but it's
especially if you're the father.
Yeah, I believe I am.
I'm not going there, John. Please continue.
Why are you putting down in my head?
What?
Why are you putting down in my head?
I was not doing that. I was trying to.
Now I'm thinking about that.
The fact that the money is mentioned and it's an issue.
Well, it was $31,000. It's not chump change.
Daughter.
I could have bought a Mercedes like you with that kind of money.
Please keep going, John.
Okay, anyway. So here's the bottom line and the part that's coincidental. So there's a deadline to apply to the school because she was late doing this. There was a deadline. I don't remember the deadline was January or February of 2022, whatever it was. And Israel had all these vaccine requirements to get into the country, and she was not vaccinated. So the rabbi is telling her, you got to go to Israel. She's saying, okay, I'm willing to go. Israel's saying, if you don't get vaccinated, you can't get in. And she's going, shit, what do I do? Dilemma, right? So long story short, I said, I don't know. But if the rabbi said to go, this will work out. Let's see what happens. We're counting down the days. The last day that she was allowed to apply to the school, the deadline, that day, I opened the Yahoo News, because I still am a dinosaur, I use Yahoo, and Israel dropped their vaccination requirements. The news came out that day. Immediately, we registered her for school, and she was off for the year. How coincidental is that? The exact day.
Amazingly coincidental.
You're being sarcastic.
Oh my
That was
God.
insane.
What do you want me to say? I'm in agreement with you.
No, you're blowing that
and
off like
you
it's not
are
even a big deal.
judging.
Okay,
You
whatever.
are
Fine. Maybe your story's
judging.
better. Go ahead. Your turn. Let's hear your story.
So my other story, I have to put in the bracket of strange, but maybe it's not. For me, it was. So I grew up in the very tip top of South America in a place called Mabaruma, and I mentioned this last week. I just didn't mention the place where I grew up. It was a very, very small town. So I went to the city I went to nursing school and agriculture school. I started there. And I became friends with one of the girls that was working with me. And I was going to go home to visit my parents, and I asked her to go with me. So here's the crazy thing. My father was really good friends with the guys in the military, and we couldn't get on the commercial flights. They were all sold out. So my dad called up this military officer and said, Jenny is trying to come home. She can't get on a flight. So he put us on a military helicopter. This is
at taxpayer expense.
Oh my God. This is not a US. We're talking about.
You sure you want to confess to this before the Guyanese government comes after you?
So anyway, my girlfriend and I were sent to like this military base, and we got on this chopper, and I've never been on a chopper in my life. And we take off with supplies that they were flying in to take to the soldiers that were protecting, because the part of Ghana where I lived, there was always threats of Venezuelan invasion, because Venezuela claimed that that part of Guyana was a part of Venezuela. And they were always watching us because it's a very wealthy country sitting on gold, bauxite, diamonds,
Guyana?
Oil. Yes, it's a very wealthy country.
They don't live like it's a wealthy country.
They weren't allowed.
Does the government pillage all the money?
They weren't allowed to do anything about all of their natural resources, because Venezuela would have invaded, and the Venezuelan army was larger than the population of Guyana. So we had to really curb our enthusiasm and know it's there, not touch it.
Curb our enthusiasm.
So what ended up happening is my girlfriend and I were on this chopper. It's shaking like. Have you ever been on a chopper?
You mean a helicopter? No.
A helicopter. It was shaking. I said to her, I never want to come on one of these things again. And the flight was 1 hour. So we flew to where my parents lived, and it's kind of in the jungle, and it was really storming, and the guys couldn't find the airport. I don't know whatever happened. We ended up in Venezuela on a military chopper. This really happened.
That sounds safe.
No, it was not.
I'm joking.
And guess what? We ran out of fuel. And it just so happened we had fuel on board that we were taking to the military base where my parents live. They kept trying to find a flat surface to put the chopper down, take some fuel that we had on board, and put on the chopper so we could get there safely. This was a weird day. So
yeah, I'll say it's a weird day. Yeah.
Down in the village, and then we realized it was like some kind of like a Amerindian reservation.
What reservation?
Amerindian, American Indians. They live in these rural areas. And as the chopper started to come down, we could see these people's roofs flying off, their pots flying out.
Oh, shit.
So we had to.
Would they have huts or something?
Yeah, they live in thatch roof houses because there's no winter.
Right.
So they pulled the chopper back up, and we're trying to find a place, and we couldn't. We ended up, to me, this was genius. The men in our military in Guyana, they are trained. I think they'd fit well in with our SEALs here in the US, the kind of training they have. They hovered the chopper on a rock. And we're sitting in the chopper scared to death. We knew we were in some kind of danger. We didn't realize we were in Venezuela at this time.
You realize, though, that if they were that smart, they wouldn't have flown into Venezuela.
they didn't have the best navigational instruments on some of these aircrafts. And I don't think it was their fault. These pilots are very good. I used to fly a lot because my very first boyfriend was an Air Force pilot, and I flew with him a lot in airplanes, though, not choppers.
Right.
So the first drum of fuel, and it's only one person to do this because it was a pilot, a co-pilot, and an engineer, and the two of us.
Right.
We saw the first barrel of oil just get sucked down by the waterfall that this rock was in the middle of. And she and I am like, I think we're gonna die.
How old were you?
Probably 19, 20. And I said, oh my God, I think I'm gonna get you killed. I was crying, I was scared, and there's nobody to like tell us what's going on, but we knew something wasn't right. So finally, this genius engineer that was on the plane, on the chopper, he got the fuel out, and we were able to fuel up the aircraft, get enough fuel. In the meantime, my parents and everyone, they all think we're dead because the chopper didn't show up when we were supposed to, and they lost touch.
So they thought it crashed.
They thought we crashed. We got to the airport.
Good thing it didn't, because otherwise we wouldn't be doing this podcast right
You
now.
would never have met this wonderful woman that you're doing this podcast.
Oh, geez, what a tragedy that would have been.
We finally show up. My parents, everyone is like freaked out. They're like, oh my God, we didn't know what happened to you guys. And then we told them we felt like two heroes. But I made a decision. I will never go back on a helicopter.
Helicopters are deadly.
And I've never gone back. So this is not the story, though. This is just a prelude.
My God, there's more?
Really quick. I don't want to take over.
God, I'm going to kill myself.
We get to my parents' house, and there are lots of mosquitoes there. So you have to put what you call a mosquito net over the bed to sleep at night. Because these mosquitoes, they bite you and they go in your head.
Wait, what do they do?
I'm not repeating it.
No, I just want to hear that sound again. What do they do?
So I climbed up in the room where my girlfriend was going to sleep to hang mosquito netting. And I looked out of the window because the windows on our home, the bottom panes were painted, but the top weren't because we didn't want people to see in. And I looked outside, and Jonathan, I saw the most unusual, huge light. And I kept looking at it, and I was mesmerized, and my brain is trying to decipher what that could be.
You gonna tell me there's a UFO or something?
I believe it was.
Did you bang your head in that helicopter?
No. You know, I get angry when people joke about it because I really saw this, and that left an indelible mark.
That's the punchline, the indelible mark.
No, and as throughout my life, I have wondered what it is.
Miss Fleave, what happened was you banged your head in the helicopter, you were seeing things.
Jonathan, I don't make fun of your serious things. Please don't make fun of this.
Because they're not outrageous like this.
So I looked out the window, I kept looking at it. I go, it can't be the moon, it's too low. It can't be someone walking with the light, it's too large and it's too high. What is it? Because this place is really dark at nights. And I kept staring at it. So I jumped down, I ran and called my mom. I'm like, Mom, come and see this light. It's so weird. Please. And my mother's like, I can't come right now. I'm in the middle of something. And by the time she came, the thing, it was gone. But I know I saw it.
Of course you did.
And throughout my life, I've wondered what it was. And then as I grew older and people started relating stories of UFOs and stuff, I swear to God, that's what I saw.
Yeah, okay, you didn't. I don't mean to burst your bubble.
So what did I see, John? Since you know everything.
As I said, you probably banged your head on the helicopter. But if it wasn't bang, the mind sometimes plays tricks on people. You went through a traumatized. Let me finish. I just listened to you storytell for the last 10 minutes. By the way, you have to work on your storytelling skills. You could take I would say you could probably have chopped 40% off that story and it would have not have affected the story at all. But it would have saved our listeners the pain and agony from. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because I think they would love to. I think they will enjoy hearing the story. It was.
Well, we'll find out when we get the hate mail.
It really happened. You're just jealous because you've never been on a helicopter, and you have.
Remember, I don't like amusement parks, and along those lines, I don't do amusement parks, motorcycles, or helicopters. I tie them all together as dangerous. I don't like dangerous. It's not my thing.
You're such a little priss. What kind of man are you?
What the hell's a priss? I'm a boy. I'm not a man. We already determined that. No. You see how consistently I'm a boy?
No, you are a priss.
No, I don't want to die.
Oh, so Jonathan, you think you're going to become a stone, like a big rock in a mountain?
I don't know what
somewhere?
happened to Kobe Bryant. Remember that one? What happened to all these people that were killed on helicopters and these small engine
You
planes?
are
Why did we do that?
clearly
I have to add skydiving to my list of things that I don't do because I'm only a little boy.
You're
So
clearly a half-empty kind of person. Well, listen, Jonathan.
no, I'm just one that wants to stay alive.
Millions of people who travel on helicopters. Okay. Why are you picking the few stories?
I'm talking about recreational helicopters. I'm not talking about like helicopters you have to go on, like if you're in the army or things like that. That's just part of the deal.
It was not recreational. It was the only way home to my parents' house for Christmas.
And they didn't have cars?
You couldn't drive.
Bicycle?
Why don't you learn the geography before you ask silly, stupid questions?
Couldn't care less about the geography of Guyana or communist Venezuela.
Drive.
And can you please not say Venezuela without inserting the word communist in front of it, please? It's communist Venezuela. That's how we know Venezuela. Communist Venezuela. Is there some sort of problem?
I just have chosen the path of the least resistance
In
when
fact,
it comes to dealing with you and certain
in fact,
topics.
with communist Venezuela, it went from being a rich, good country, it was run into the ground. And that, by the way, I know the Republicans say this all the time about the test case for socialism, but in reality, that's exactly what happened in Venezuela. Venezuela is rich in natural resources and oil. They had industry, they had everything. And then this moron, Hugo Chavez, comes in, a monster that ran the country into the ground, followed by the other.
Well, guess what? We love him in Guyana because he did that. We signed a deal with Exxon, and they're mining all in Guyana now, and they're going.
Yeah, but they still live like backwards people in jungles and
develop all the natural resources that we have sat on over the years.
Let me know when that happens, because right now, okay, it's all on the ground. Nothing happened. It's a poor country. Please, what are you talking about? People live in Guyana. It's like a backwards country.
I hope some Guyanese people are listening to this and you can handle the backlash.
You know how much hate mail I get already? I don't need more hate. Oh, by the way, before I get more hate mail, in regard to the whole vaccination thing, so I just want to go back to that for a second, because I'm sure someone's going to start attacking me about not having my daughter vaccinated and why was that even an issue. I just want to clearly state there was a reason, and that was, forget everything else that I've ever said about vaccination, it's that she was 17 years old, and I wanted to wait until she turned 18 for her to make her own decision as to whether she wanted to get vaccinated or not. I didn't want to be the one that she ever comes back to and says, you made me do it. I was just a kid. I didn't know better. I waited till she was 18 and I said, okay, do what you want. Now it's up to you if you want to get vaccinated or not. I just want to clarify that in case anybody asks why this whole vaccination thing was even an issue. Okay. So now that I have that off my chest, we can move on.
So since I told the story and I've eaten up the podcast.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go with my next story.
For the rest of the podcast, I will
used your quota.
It
was completely unreasonable.
And let you do what
you know what you did? You raped
like
our listeners' ears. That's what you did.
I think that they're interested in hearing what the story that I told. And by the way, everything I said was the truth, because the person who was on
nobody was doubting that
helicopter with me happens to be living in Santa Barbara, California. Because when I told my children the story, they said, Mom, yeah, right. You're just trying to be dramatic. You almost crashed in a helicopter. And then it turns out I heard from the girlfriend who was with me on that helicopter.
Okay, now on to the good stories. Okay, we done with this? Are you done?
I told you the rest of the podcast is you, John. I shall sit here and remain with my mouth shut.
Do you promise?
Because I don't like to steal the show from you, Mr. Right, who loves to speak.
Actually, this is your topic, so you're in control of this one. Oh, I do want to say, talk about, again, I'm going to refer to it as coincidental, but in reality, God's will, just to show you how weird things happen. So the same guy that my daughter went to that told her she had to go to Israel and then everything played out exactly to allow it to happen, like I described before. So I went through I'll share something personal about me. So I went, what's so funny? Why is that funny? Oh, can you explain why that's funny?
When are you not sharing something personal about you? Please keep going.
Oh, do you want me to be tight-lipped and not share anything? I'm sorry, I'm sharing a part of me here. If you don't appreciate that, maybe I won't do that. You want to be all secretive like you? Okay.
Keep going.
We're trying to get information from you is like pulling teeth at a dentist. Anyway, so I was going through a rough time career-wise. I would say maybe about, I don't know, maybe like 10 years ago, whatever it was. Anyway, hit a rough patch, you know. I'm at my job, June will be 30 years. So in those 30 years, sometimes you have some rough patches, made some bad decisions. It just, things weren't working out. Everything I did felt like it was wrong. It was really, really tough time. So I was considering leaving and doing something else. Because as you see from our podcast, I have a lot of other talents.
Oh, you're super talented. That's the only thing
I detect some sarcasm there.
No. I don't do sarcasm.
Even your face is okay. Anyway, so I was going to leave. I was going to do something different, and I said, you know what? Before I make a drastic decision, because I do make a nice living, and to give that up and walk away is not an easy decision. Where I could just replace that by something else, because secretly I'm really not that smart, and there isn't too many things that I can do. So I went to speak to this rabbi, the same rabbi. I said, look, here's the situation. I'm screwing everything up. Nothing's going right. I'm really getting frustrated. I'm not happy. Every day I come to work, it's like a struggle. I don't want to be there. And I'm thinking of just calling it a day and being done and selling my business or partnering with someone and being out. I said, what should I do? And I had an offer on the table to do a transition thing. And he says to me, he goes, give it 3 days. I said, okay, but that's not.
When can I go and see this rabbi?
I said, that's not an answer. I go, I want an answer. Should I do this or not? Nothing's changing in 3 days. He goes, give it 3 days. So I said to myself, you know what? If I made the trip to Brooklyn to see this guy, and this guy's been spot on with all the information he's given my son and other things he said to me, let me give it 3 days and let's see what happens. Okay, so we fast forward. I'm in day number 3. Right, the last day, all of a sudden I get a call from, remember I discussed on the last podcast, my former boss Marty, the one that was like my office father, calls me up and he says, listen, I'm considering retiring. And he goes, as part of that retiring, he goes, you know how we've talked that I want to give you all of my business and basically give you my book of business. I said, yeah. He goes, well, I'd like to start that process. I go, Marty, I love you. I don't want you to retire. He goes, no. And he goes, I'm not saying I'm retiring tomorrow. He goes, but I want you to know I'm going to start doing things with you now and transitioning my business over to you, which was a game changer because it was an enormous amount of business. So all of a sudden I looked up and I said, holy crap. The guy told me wait 3 days. And on day number 3, I just got a game changing offer dumped in my lap. So I went to my current boss and I told him what happened. And he goes, holy shit, I'm going to become Jewish now. Because the whole thing came from what the rabbi said. And long story short, it actually happened. It played out that way. And I'm thrilled at what I do and everything worked out great. How crazy is that?
I think it's wonderfully crazy, John.
It's a true story. Crazy stuff. So that
So your stories are true. Your stories are true, but my stories are embellished.
They're true and they're quick. They're true, quick, and keep people's attention. Yours are long, partially delusional, and you're losing people along the way. Listeners are actually passing away during your story. Like you start with 100 listeners. By the end of your story, there's like 7 left.
Well, sorry, John, I'm not as perfect as you are. So layered my stories.
I'm just busting your chops. I liked your story, but I don't believe the UFO thing. I think that's
I am not saying it's a UFO, but it's a UFO because a UFO represents an identified flying object. Have you identified it?
So probably 99% of unidentified flying objects are actually military equipment that's being tested by the government.
Not weird.
It was probably a Venezuelan.
Right outside of our house.
Really?
Yes.
I don't know about that.
So, John, I have another story that I guess I'm telling a lot of weird stories, but I've had a lot of weird experiences. I don't know if you want to call them weird, but maybe unusual, but they fit that box. So I'll go ahead and tell it.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yes.
Did you ever have a drug problem?
John, I've never done any drugs in my life.
No hallucinogenic things ever?
Why would your mind go there? Is that your thing? It's not mine.
No, it's not at all. I don't do any drugs and I never did. But when people start telling about UFOs and seeing things like that and bright objects and
I'm relaying something that I experienced.
I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. I'm saying it's a little bit strange.
John, you grew up in the middle of a big city. For the formative years of my life, I lived in a very rural area where things that you wouldn't necessarily have had an opportunity to experience, I did. And so don't begrudge me them or make me feel bad for what I experienced.
I'm not making you feel bad.
They can dive off
Hey, stop being so mean.
Well, you're the one being mean because you're bashing me for
You hurt my feelings. I'm very fragile. I'm just a boy.
Anyway,
Stop treating me like a man.
my next weird thing that I'm going to share with you guys.
I thought it was my turn.
Okay, go ahead.
No, no, go. Go.
So one night, some friends were coming to take me out to dinner because I had been struggling with some challenging. I was liquidating the clinic, and that was very emotional for me because.
So this is recently.
Yeah, this is like maybe 3 years.
Well, I just want you to provide context and time frame.
So, my friends came over and I wasn't ready when they got there, and I felt really bad. I was on the phone with lawyers, ate up the time, and I didn't realize that it was late. So they came and I said, "Hey guys, forgive me. I just still need to get my shoes." So they're sitting in my living room. The TV is off, everything is off, and I ran upstairs to get my shoes. When I came back down, the TV was on. And I thought, that's really weird. I turned the TV on. I thought they told me they were really hungry. But I didn't say anything. I like people to make themselves at home when they visit me. And I was actually touched. They felt so at home that they just put the TV on.
You don't mind that they were touching your stuff?
It's stuff. My stuff is my friend's stuff. When you come over.
Touching my stuff.
So anyway, I'm putting my shoes on. And one of them said to me, "Jenny, why do you put the TV on? We're going now." And I go, "I didn't put the TV on." And one of my friends, her name was Norma. And Norma says, "I didn't put it on." And I go, "Well, Jerry put it on." And Jerry looked at me like, "I don't know how to turn the TV on."
Jerry's a man or a woman?
A man. And so I thought, you didn't put it on. She didn't put it on. How did the TV come on? Right. So we're sitting there like, that's weird. And I have this beautiful crystal chandelier, which I talked to you about. That's coming
100 times. Yeah.
And it has many, it's like over maybe close to 100 beautiful crystals that are hanging. And it's really kind of mesmerizing to watch when it's on.
I don't like it that much. Can I be honest with you? I don't think it was such a nice chandelier.
You haven't even seen it.
You showed me pictures of it. I don't think it was so nice.
You compare the picture to the live article.
I just don't think it was so great.
Why are you judging something you never even
I'm just giving my opinion. You show me a picture. I didn't think it was so great.
It's great.
Shoot me for not liking your chandelier.
It's mine and I love it.
Whatever.
So your opinion matters very little in this situation.
There's a lot of hostility tonight.
So anyway, in the middle of all this, the crystals on the chandelier started flying as if someone had taken a bat or something and hit it. And we are sitting there watching all this. The TV's on. The crystals are going crazy on the chandelier. And usually if the door is open and the breeze is blowing, the crystals, they don't even move because they're heavy. And so they're sitting there looking at me going, "Jenny, what the heck's going on in your house?"
Oh, like it's haunted or something?
Yeah, it was weird. And I said, "I don't know," because the three of us are sitting in a different room from where the chandelier was, and the door was closed.
Maybe it's God sending you a message or something.
So this is another thing that I always ponder what the hell that was. I turned the TV on and had my chandelier crystals going crazy. But that's my other weird story.
So the house may have been possessed or something.
Yeah, I lived in it, John, so most likely it was.
Well, did you ever hear of a book? I think I mentioned this on one prior podcast, a book called Small Miracles.
You may have mentioned it, but I'm so sorry. I don't always retain what you tell me.
Is that an age thing or something?
Yes, it's an age thing. Or maybe disinterested.
Oh, okay. That, by the way, you've said a lot of mean things to me on these podcasts. I'm gonna start putting together a list. I'm gonna write a book one day of all the insults from my podcast partner.
But you see, John,
anyways,
you instigate half of them.
You're a very nice person, but when you're around me, you become very mean.
Because you infuriate me in a
Why?
big way.
Why? What do I do to infuriate?
Because
I'm nothing but nice to
John,
you.
you're constantly impertinent.
What does that mean? Did you say I'm impotent? Impotent? Is that what you just said? What the hell would you know about that?
Are you?
Have you been talking to my wife?
Yeah.
Sick freak. Anyway, so there's a book called Small Miracles, in case I didn't mention this on one of the other podcasts. So this book taught me a very interesting lesson. You know how, I'm not like hot tempered.
Can I just interrupt you for 1 second?
Why not?
I just want to remark what a great storyteller you are. You're so clear and concise.
I am.
And I am so full of details. We're very different, but I want to compliment you, and I'm going to try to emulate you.
You should emulate me in a lot of ways, not just
Yeah.
storytelling.
Yes,
Hang around with me for a day or two. It could be like my
and
protege.
then could you imagine what an amazing person I'm going to become?
The transformation could be incredible
I
because you
can.
have potential.
It will be monumental.
It could be.
Groundbreaking.
I've noticed you have potential to be as good as me. You have it in you, but we have to pull it out. That's the problem. You're too
pretend you're a dentist and just extract it.
I don't need tools for this one. Most likely power tools like drills and chainsaws. Anyway, so one of the things that this book, Small Miracles, taught me was there was a story about this guy. And I really, again, I hope I didn't mention this. We've done 10 previous podcasts already. So I've done a lot of yapping. So I don't know, maybe I did mention this, but there was a story about this guy who had to make a flight. He was going somewhere, but he stopped off to talk to this very well-known rabbi for some advice that he went to. And a lot of my stories involve rabbis, whatever. Anyway, so, and the guy said,
we've all determined that you live in a bubble. It's called a Jewish bubble.
A Jewish bubble.
Keep going.
So it's a kosher bubble. So, so he's supposed to be by this guy at a certain time. He gets there on time, like, well, let's say 1 o'clock. I'm making that up, whatever. And the guy is always right on time. You know, the guy shows up on time, goes in to speak to him right on time, never waiting. All of a sudden, the guy's waiting 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, and he's getting annoyed. He's got to make this flight. So all of a sudden, about 45 minutes later, the rabbi opens the door. He's like, okay, I could see you now. And the guy's like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm 45 minutes, you're 45 minutes late. I had a flight I have to make. The guy's like, I'm sorry, I was doing something. He's like, but I'm on a schedule. Anyway, so he goes in, he's all angry. They talk, he gives him the advice, whatever. The guy just storms out, goes to the airport, all of a sudden, he's stuck in traffic. That was just part of the story. I almost forgot, and it is relevant. So he's even later now. By the time he gets to the airport, the gate's closed. The flight's about to take off. They won't let him in, and he missed his flight. What happened? The plane crashed. So he didn't, because this guy was running late, because of the traffic, he wasn't on the plane. Plane went down. His life was saved. When I heard that story, you know what it said to me is when I was in elementary school, there was this teacher that did not like cursing. And what he used to do is he said, instead of cursing, I want you to say 3 Hebrew words. That's a Gam Zula Tova. And with the translation of Gam Zula Tova means this also is for the best. So you get really pissed off, like Gam Zula Tova. It sounds like a horrible thing, but it means this too is for the best. So what I learned from that is that, you know, if you believe that things are divine and you believe that things are predetermined, when you get stuck in traffic or when you get delayed or when something happens, not to get angry about it, because maybe you're going to be late for a reason. Maybe you would have been killed in a car accident had you been on the road 5 minutes further up. Maybe you would have been pulled over by a cop and gotten tickets. Maybe the car would, who knows? Anything could have happened. So I've learned to accept and get less mad when things happen that knock me off course, because I say this also must be happening for a good reason.
It's a great story, and I agree with you. I agree, because my mother put it this way to me when I was a kid. Because I had a similar type thing. Our school was going somewhere, and my parents didn't let me go, and the boat sunk. A lot of them drowned.
There you go.
And I would have drowned because I can't swim. But anyway, my mother said it to me this way, and it's I don't want to use my I word because
I word indelible.
But it left that mark because she said, always remember every disappointment is for a good.
Your mother is a smart woman.
So what did you think?
You must have taken after your father. So anyway, so yes, so that's what we say.
The hostility oozes out of his pores. He can't help himself.
All of these bad things that appear to happen as being bad, they may end up being good things. And it's just interesting. And it makes you a less angry, less anxious person if you really believe that these things are divine and from God, because they could potentially be saving you. And in fact, there's something else in my religion that talks about breaking things. I mean, let's say you have like I gave this candelabra. I had this candelabra, and there was one little damaged thing on it. So my wife wanted to buy a new one. We bought a new one, and I gave the old one to a friend of mine, and he glued it together, put it together, whatever. Anyway, so he put it on his mantle, and he hung a big picture behind it. Anyway, he didn't hang it right, and the picture fell off the wall, knocked into the chandelier. This crystal chandelier, not crystal candle, not that candelabra, fell on the floor, smashed all over the place. And it was a beautiful one that we had given them. And she was irate. And there's something in my religion that talks about how sometimes God will rain down on an object and destroy it, but it's in replacement of destroying you. And that also makes you less mad, because if God took this candelabra and destroyed it, but if you didn't have that, he was going to destroy you in a car accident or destroy you in some sort of horrible accident, it also makes you less angry about the item that was broken, because you'd much rather have the broken item than you be broken.
So I love how this podcast somehow just fell into, this is your section and this is, because you've been speaking about all the coincidental things and my stories have all been weird. And
well,
the last one,
strange, weird, and coincidental occurrences.
Because we're almost out of time.
Again, with the time thing, you're so hung up on time.
When I was about 12 years old, 12, 13, I had a dream where I was walking to school and I saw a gold ring, like a man's ring, on the ground. And I forgot about it. Who remembers dreams as a kid? And as I was walking to school that morning, guess what I stumbled on?
Excuse me. What'd you stumble on?
John, I have to edit this out.
What? It's
so
a bodily function. I burped. It's not the end of the world.
Gross and obnoxious.
There's not one listener that's listening to this that doesn't burp. It's not the end of the world. It slipped out. What is the problem? God, just move on. Go ahead.
Anyway, to continue my story before I was rudely interrupted by John not controlling his body functions. I apologize, people. This is how he behaves. Anyway,
or doesn't.
I stopped and I looked at it and I thought.
Yeah, looked at it and you thought.
I walked upon, as I was walking to school and I saw this gold thing on the ground. I stopped and I thought, wait, didn't I see this here before? Did I pass it when I was going home from school yesterday? Why didn't I pick it up? And then I realized I had dreamt it. And that exactly what I dreamt has now, I'm standing in front of it.
It's like a premonition almost.
It was the strangest thing. So I picked it up and it was a man's ring and I brought it to the principal of our school and I said, I dreamt this and then I found it. And I said it was fairly strange, but I have had many, many incidences like this. And so I gave it to her and she said, I'm going to make a public announcement and hold it for a week. And if no one comes to claim it, it's yours.
And what was the result?
No one ever claimed it.
You got it?
And she gave it to me.
Where is it? Do you still have it?
I did a stupid thing with it.
You sold it for scrap?
No. I had a crush on a boy in my class.
You gave it to him?
And he was going to join the military.
Oh my God.
And I gave it to him and my mother was really upset at me.
You think?
So when I was going to university, she came to visit and now I have a real boyfriend, the pilot I mentioned. And he came over one night and my mother, who doesn't think sometimes, asked me in front of him if I got the ring back. Because she told me I had to get it back. So my boyfriend was an army officer in the military. He flew for the Air Force.
He was a private?
No, he's a captain in the army.
Oh, he was a pilot. Oh, okay.
And the guy that I gave it to is a private. Can you believe it? The end of the next day, he had the ring.
Really?
He had it. I don't know how. He went and threatened my friend.
That's crazy.
And got it. I actually saw that friend that I'd given it to, and I was like,
well, the weird part is that
wait. And then he brought it, and you know what he said to me? You're not getting it because if you wanted it, you would not have given it away.
He's right.
And I never saw it again. He kept it.
And then probably sold it for scrap.
Ended up breaking up with him. So who knows what happened to it? But that's a true story.
Well, like I said, the weird part is that you dreamt it and then saw it. That's freaky. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. Can I want to wrap up with one other story, which also, okay. So again, I'm going to get a little personal. Now, my kids do listen to some of these podcasts, so I have to be very verbal. I have to verbally edit when I tell a story, but so I know my wife since we are 13 and 14 years old, right? We met she was in 8th grade, I was in 9th grade. And we were just friends in high school. And what happened was then we went, she left to go to Israel for the year to study. And after high school was over. And then fortunately, Saddam Hussein decided to launch Scud missiles at Israel. And although they did absolutely no damage, the fortunate part of it was she got freaked out and left and came home and registered in Queens College, where I happened to be. So I saw her one day and I'm like, hey, Karen, I'm like, hey, what's going on? What are you doing home from Israel? Tell me what happened. I said, hey, why don't we go out for lunch or whatever it is, right? So we do. And of course, one thing leads to another. She's a woman, I'm a man. And I said, hey, do you want a back rub or something? I'll give you a back massage. And she said, yeah, sure, whatever. So I'm sitting in the car giving her a back rub. And of course, I go to kiss her. And she says, no. And I said, what do you mean no? She goes, well, I don't kiss people that I'm not dating. To which she expected me to reply, well, why don't we go out and we date? And instead, I said, oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to drop you back off at school, which I did. And she wouldn't talk to me anymore. And months went by, I think maybe even close to a year went by, where she refused to have any communication with me. Anyway.
I don't blame her, but I'm just saying.
Oh, no, I was completely wrong. So I happened to be in the cafeteria, and all of a sudden I'm walking out, she's walking in. This is again like a year later, and I'm like, Karen, she's like, get away from me, you asshole. And she doesn't curse, really. I mean, now she does because she lives with me, and anyone that lives with me curses, but she didn't at that time. So
there's a podcast with you.
So it was a shocking word that flew out of her mouth. And I'm like, what's the problem? She's like, what's the problem? You haven't spoken to me in a year since that disgusting incident. And she goes, and now you want to come over and be friends with me? She's like, get the hell away from me. I'm not interested. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Come on, let's go out Saturday night. We'll have a good time. She's like, I have a boyfriend. I'm like, so what? I'm like, who? And she tells me the guy's name, and I know the guy from high school. I'm like, he's a giant loser. What are you talking about? You can't date him. That's ridiculous.
You are so obnoxious in every single way.
So I
come down from your pedestal, John.
I said, just let's go out Saturday night. She's like, fine.
Listen, John, you're not very tall. How did you get on top of that pedestal?
And the boyfriend was tall, by the way.
Did you mosey on up like an ant? Come down.
No,
good up there.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, so the rest of the story is we went out Saturday night, and of course, within a week and a half, she was breaking up with the boyfriend. That was goodbye, boyfriend. That was the end of that. And then we ended up dating and got engaged, got married, had 3 kids and all that. But if it wasn't for that one coincidental meeting where we happened to bump into each other because she was giving someone a ride home that day. She didn't even want to give this person a ride, but begrudgingly, because she's nice, she said yes. So she happened to be coming into the cafeteria to meet him, and I happened to be walking out. If it wasn't for that one moment of connection, then my 3 children wouldn't be here. God knows what would have happened to me, because she kind of normalized me. You think I'm not normal, but you should have seen me beforehand. I was really not normal.
I always say she deserves a crown.
Yeah, no, she does. Well, you actually did promise you were going to get her one for her birthday.
Yes.
I wrote that down.
Yes,
and okay, I had you sign and notarize that.
Yes, I will.
Not one from Party City either. We don't want a junk crown. So anyway, so again, coincidental. Was that coincidence, or was that meant to be because this is the way it was supposed to happen?
But I thought you've already established at the beginning of this podcast.
Correct.
Coincidences are not.
You listened to me. Thank you. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I attribute it to divine. That was the divine path. And that's what happened. So I just wanted to share that. I thought that was an interesting story that ties into the topic.
Okay, great story, John. All right. So
that was such a blow off. Okay, great story. Okay, moving on.
So we are at the end of the podcast. As always, the good things have to come to an end.
Yes, they do.
And we hope that you guys especially enjoyed. Well, you may have a difficult time with my stories because John said I'm a terrible storyteller. My stories are not clear and concise.
But there's a solution, though.
But I furnished the details so people can actually get a clear picture.
Okay, so do me a favor. If you're listening to this podcast, when Jenny starts talking, just fast forward until she wraps up, and you'll hear the end, because that's the only relevant part. The rest of it is just noise.
Yeah, listen to John.
I'm so not going to be invited back for podcast 12.
Everything His name, don't forget, is Rantithan Wright. And as you can see, it's a well-earned name. And so we thank you guys again.
I
for
shared a lot of
listening
stuff from
to
the heart
us.
here, okay? This was a very personal podcast to me. Very personal.
And we can't wait to come and do another segment for you. And hopefully it's a topic you will enjoy if you didn't enjoy
Oh, you
this
will, because
one.
I'll pick it. And my topics are always phenomenal.
Thank you, guys. You've been listening to How Can You Say That? And really, how could we say some of the stuff we say? Anyway,
That's what editing is for. Thank you for listening, though. We will be back.
How Can You Say That is a podcast that is raw and authentic. And we thank you for continuing to listen to us. Thank you for the feedback. And we will be back with segment 12.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Bye.